Hey, welcome back. We have, I don't know if you realize this, basically a month of school left. So 4 more weeks and then you're done and we can relax before we come back to whatever school's going to look like in the fall. So uh, if you had a hard time with the quadratic formula, do not beat yourself up, okay? Almost everybody kind of struggled with this. It's difficult, and as I said last week, there's a ton of little places to make a little mistake, and if you make one little mistake, it's bad news for you, okay? So there's a few really common mistakes I saw, so we'll kind of talk about those, and I'll do a few more examples, and I'm going to try to make it easy for you this week. Your practice problems, I'm going to give you 4 of them, which is not very many, okay? What that means, since I'm only giving you 4 of them, is that you need to really make sure you do those 4 correctly and really understand this, okay? So remember, this is the quadratic formula. X is negative b plus and minus square root b squared, and I'm going to change this a little bit. I'm going to change it to plus negative 4 times a times c, all that over 2a. Okay, notice I put a lot of parentheses in there. If you put the parentheses, that's going to help you avoid some of these common mistakes we're seeing, okay? The most common mistakes I'm seeing is some of us, when we do b squared, like let's say b was negative 5, you're doing negative 5 squared, okay? Put the b in parentheses. What this means is, remember your order of operations, you do the exponent first. So you would do 5 squared, which is 25, and then throw the negative on the front. That's backwards, okay? What you need to do is negative 5 times negative 5, which is positive 25, okay? So remember, when you square this, it will always be positive, okay? That was one of the mistakes I saw a lot, okay? So this b squared, whatever b is, it's going to be positive, okay? The other really common mistake I saw is before, when we had b squared minus 4ac, we're kind of forgetting this negative sign, and that's a super common mistake. So I think by changing this to plus negative 4, maybe that's going to help, okay? So don't lose that negative sign. And then the third problem, the third problem I saw a lot is we were forgetting the square root. So a lot of you would get to something like this, 2 plus or minus the square root of 16 over 4. I just made that up. And then your next step would look like this, 2 plus or minus 16 over 4. So the square root is gone, but it's still a 16. Okay? So when you do the square root, remember, square root means what number times itself will give you 16. Since 4 times 4 is 16, your next step should be that. Okay? So that was the third common mistake, is these square roots would just sort of disappear, but the number wouldn't change. Okay? So you got to be really careful about those things. Let's look at a couple examples just to remind you what they look like. Let's try this one first. 2x squared plus 11x equals 6. Okay, remember, step 1 is make sure it's in standard form. So you need this to be equal 0, so we're going to do minus 6 minus 6. Oops, minus 6 equals 0. There's step 1. Step 2 was find a, b, and c. Well, a is 2, b is 11, c is negative 6. Okay, most of you guys, everybody who sent me work did fine with that part. Okay, then we fill in the equation. So negative b plus and minus the square root b squared plus negative 4 times positive 2 times negative 6 all over 2 times 2. Almost everybody who sent it in filled in the equation correctly. A couple times, maybe every once in a while, we would put b instead of c or something. But for the most part, you guys did great on that, okay? And then we're going to start simplifying, and this is where mistakes started happening, okay? So negative 11 is just negative 11. 11 squared means 11 times 11, which is 121. And then plus, let's see, negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. Negative 8 times negative 6 is positive 48. Divided by 2 times 2 is 4. Let's see, so negative 11 plus or minus 121 plus 48 is 169. And then maybe you know what the square root of 169 is. My guess is most of you don't. So use your calculator if you have to. But the square root of 169 is 13. Okay, that means one of my answers is negative 11 plus 13 over 4. And the other one is negative 11 minus 13 over 4. This is the other part. Once you guys got to here, this last step everybody did fine on. Okay, so our mistakes were in between here and here. Alright, let's see. Negative 11 plus 13 is 2. 2 over 4 simplifies to 1/2. Negative 11 minus 13 is negative 24. Negative 24 divided by 4 is negative 6. Okay? What's the only way to guarantee that you got the answer right? Yeah, you got to check them, right? This is another thing that will help you guys, especially on this, because there's so many places to make a little mistake. Maybe more than anything else we've done all year, this is where you need to be checking your answers. So if we're correct, if I put 1/2 in for x, this equation should be true. I'm going to do this without a calculator. You could probably do it with a calculator and get the answer maybe easier. See, 1/2 squared means 1/2 times 1/2, which is 1/4. 11 times half, I'm just going to leave that as 11 halves. 2 times 1/4 is 1/2. 1/2 plus 11 halves is 12 halves. Does 12 divided by 2 equal 6? Yes, it does. So 1/2 works. Let's double check the other one. If I put negative 6 in here, it should make the equation true. Let's see, negative 6 squared is positive 36, because anytime you square something, it's going to be positive. 11 times negative 6 is negative 66. 2 times 36 is 72. Does 72 minus 66 equal 6? Yes, it does. So we know those two answers are correct. Okay, so again, I can't express enough how important it is that you check your answers on these, guys. This is really tricky. There's a million places to make a mistake, and if you make one mistake, your answer is going to be wrong. Okay, sometimes you can make a mistake and sort of fix it later. That doesn't usually happen with quadratic formula. Let's try another one. Negative 2x squared plus 4x plus 3 equals 0. So step one is make sure it's in standard form. X squared x numbers equals 0. We're good there. Find a, b, and c. A is negative 2. B is positive 4. C is 3. Now we fill in the big gross equation. So negative b plus and minus the square root b squared plus negative 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Okay, so far so good. Simplify it a little bit. Negative 4. See, 4 squared means 4 times 4, which is positive 16, because when you square something, it's always positive. Negative 4 times negative 2 is positive 8. Positive 8 times 3 is 24. And then 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. This is a good spot to use a calculator if you don't want to do that math in your head. Let's see, getting close. 16 plus 24 is 40 over negative 4. Does anybody know what the square root of 40 is? I don't. I know it's 6 point something. So I'm going to use my calculator. Square root of 40 is 6.32. Okay, so my two answers are going to be negative 4 plus 6.32 over negative 4, and then negative 4 minus 6.32 over negative 4. These aren't exact, but they're close, okay? Let's see. Negative 4 plus 6.2. And then I'm just going to type that in the calculator. 2.32 divided by negative 4 is negative 0.58. Okay, and then, see, negative 4 minus, that'd be negative 10.32 divided by negative 4. And that's going to be 2.58. Okay, so those are our two answers. We need to check those, okay? It's going to be, these ones are tricky to check for a couple reasons. One, they're weird decimals. Two, when you check them, you're not going to get, since these are estimates, the answer is not going to be exactly right. But I'm going to put them in for x and see what we get. So negative 2 times negative 0.58 squared plus 4 times negative 0.58 plus 3, and that should equal 0. This is a great one to check with the calculator. So I'm just going to type it in the calculator exactly like that. So negative 2, parentheses, negative 0.58 squared plus 4 times negative 0.58 plus 3 equals, I don't know if you can see it, 0.0072. Okay, that is really close to 0, right? So that one pretty much checks out. If we got like 1 point something here, then we should be suspicious. This is really close to 0. And then I'm going to do the same thing with 2.58. So negative 2 times 2.58 squared plus 4 times 2.58 plus 3 should equal really close to 0. Let's see, negative 2, 2.58 squared plus 4 times 2.58 plus 3 is same thing, 0.0072. Okay, so that one also works out. Okay, so it's not uncommon when you use the quadratic formula to get weird decimal answers, okay? Especially with the quadratic formula, because if it was nice easy numbers, we would maybe factor it or use square roots or something. Okay, so since we're using this complicated formula, you might get some weird answers, okay? That's okay, but make sure you check them. All right, last one. All right, let's try this one. Where'd it go? 3x squared minus 10x plus 9 equals 0. Okay, step 1, make sure it's in standard form. X squared x numbers equals 0. Good there. Find A, B, and C. And then we're going to fill in the big equation. So x equals negative b, so negative negative 10, plus or minus the square root b squared plus 4, plus negative 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Okay, you guys were pretty good at filling in the formula. Notice, remember, the only thing I changed from last week is I think it's going to be, you're less likely to make a mistake if you change this to plus negative 4ac. So try that if you were struggling a little bit. Let's see, negative negative 10, that's just positive 10. Negative 10 squared is positive 100. Remember, when you square something, it will always be positive. Plus, let's see, negative 4 times 3 is negative 12. Negative 12 times 9 is negative 108. And then 2 times 3 is 6. Okay, let's see. 100 plus negative 108 is negative 8. And we talked before, we don't know how to do the square root of a negative number, right? So if you get square root of a negative number there, the answer is no real solutions. Okay? You shouldn't have had any of those last week, but a lot of you got to this point and had a negative. That means you messed up somewhere else. But even if you didn't, you can't do the square root of a negative yet. So as soon as you see that, the answer is going to be no real solutions. Okay? Some of you went, oh, I don't know what to do with that, so I'm just going to get rid of the square root and just leave -8. You can't do that. Okay? So if you happen to get one this week, and I'll give you a hint, there's going to be at least one where the square root is negative, your answer is going to be no real solutions. And if you get that one, I would maybe double check all your math in here just to make sure that it actually is -8, because there's no way to check this. We can't plug this number in. I mean, we could plug this into the equation to check it, but it would be super messy. Okay? You guys don't need to do that. So it's possible this week you might get one with a negative square root. If you do, you're done. The answer is no real solutions. Okay? So do your best. I know this is hard. Okay? Do your best with it. You might have to struggle through it a little bit. I know some of you told me it took you a long time last week, so I feel really bad about that. I should have made less questions, I think. But nothing we can do about that now. So this week you only get 4 of them, okay? That means if you got 4 of them, you got to work really hard on them and make sure you do them right, okay? If you need help, please email me so we can set up a Google Meet. I will Google Meet with you almost any time. If I have to, I'll phone in from the disc golf course, okay? Couple weeks left. Let's try and finish strong. And I miss you guys, and I can't wait to see you soon. Good luck with this. Talk to you next week.